Hey everybody, it's Melissa again, and I'm just moving on to the second card of my 2012 Halloween card series, and I'm going to use an image that I colored in a previous video. It's the CC Designs Laugh Lines Witch, and you can find the video where I'm coloring the image on the link in the upper left hand corner here of the screen. And right now I'm just going to go through and use my BG00 and my C1 Copic markers. Just add a little bit of shadow to the image. I did cut it out with a Spellbinders large oval die, but going back through with the Copic markers and just giving it a little bit of definition. And then you'll see here I go back in with my colorless blender and just blend that out a little bit so that the shadow is not quite as harsh. Just making it look a little bit more natural. So once I had that set, I took a piece of black cardstock that I cut with my scalloped oval Spellbinder dies, and then used some of my ATG adhesive and just adhered that to the cardstock. And it, for some reason, didn't want to lay exactly how I wanted it to. So of course I kind of fidgeted around with it, but eventually got that to lay exactly where I wanted. It's always kind of tricky to line those up when you've got part of the image sticking out just a little bit, but it has a really cool kind of visual effect to it, so I really like doing that. And then I had that all set, so I set that aside and grabbed some paper that I'd selected. I'm actually using paper from the Echo Park Chillingsworth Manor paper pack. Very cute paper. Just picked out 3 different designs that I liked. Wanted to stick to a pretty simple layout since I've got a larger image that I'm working with. And I am going to do a square card, which is going to be a 5x5 square card when it's all complete. Just did a simple layout, used my ATG gun to go ahead and adhere the scrap paper where I wanted that, and then ended up wanting to go ahead and add a couple of brads, which I normally don't do until the end of the card when I have a better idea of what I want, but I already kind of had an image in my mind of the layout that I wanted, so I went ahead and just added them in, and I used my We Are Memory Keepers piercing and brad setting tool, and I picked this up at Michael's. You can find it on other locations as well online, but I'll put a link to it in my blog. And then just use some simple black brads and put a couple of them there in the corner, and then just set those again with the We Are Memory Keepers tool just to make sure that everything was going to lay flat. And usually I go a little bit more out with the embellishments, but with this card I wanted to keep things a little bit more simple since I had such a lot of coloring on the image itself. So went ahead and used 3 dimensionals to go ahead and pop the image up and give it a little bit more dimension again. So I added those on there, and then once I got the image attached, I had some paper flowers that I wanted to add to the image, so I went ahead and grabbed those. The colors in the flowers really matched the paperwork and the colors that I used in my image. But first I went ahead and added the sentiment, and the sentiment that I'm using is from the Amy R. Ghostly Greetings stamp set. Love, love, love her stamps, her sentiment sets. They're always so cute. So I picked this one out, it's Wishing You a Happy Halloween, and stamped that with my VersaFine black onyx ink. And then I punched that out with a Stampin' Up! Modern Label Punch, I believe is the name of it. I'll double check that. And then kind of played around with it, couldn't really decide exactly where I wanted it, and then ended up deciding that that bottom left hand corner would be the most appropriate place. So I brought in the flowers. I really wanted to use these. I thought that the purple and the orange just really made the card pop. And then just didn't seem right. It didn't feel right when I was laying it on the card, so I kind of played around with it a little bit. The flowers themselves aren't flat like some of the Prima flowers that I've used in the past, so these were a little bit tricky to work with, but it was okay because it gave me room to use my Stampin' Up! Bats paper punch and I believe that that is discontinued. When I purchased it, it was actually on clearance. I'm not sure if they carry it anymore, but I went ahead and just punched a couple of those out, and then used 3-dimensionals to go ahead and pop the sentiment back up to create the dimension again with the image. And then I'm also going to go ahead and adhere the bats down. I didn't want the bats to pop out. I've seen some cards where the wings kind of pop out a little bit, but I wanted to keep them flat, and you'll see why in a little bit. So I went ahead and just used some of my Tombow Money Multi adhesive and attached them directly to the card base itself there. Try not to get too much glue on there. It's really easy on that adhesive to use a little too much, so you have to be careful. And then I used the Tombow Money Multi again to attach the flower. And here you can see I kind of have to push really hard on it because this particular flower is much thicker, so it was really kind of tricky not to get it to stick. But I went back in and got a glitter pen that is produced by Copic. It's actually their Spica pens. Really like the effect that it had without the mess of some of the glitter glues, which I absolutely love as well. So wanted to try this, and you can't really tell very much on the video. Every once in a while you'll get a little glimmer of the light, but it looks really good in person when you get to see it. I know it's hard to explain, but went ahead and added that to the bats and to the Little Witch's costume, and then I took a Copic multi-liner and then went back through her hair and just added in some hair strands. This is a technique I've used on some of my other cards, and it really just makes the hair look more natural. So I went ahead and did that real quickly here as well. And then turn the card over, and I'm going to grab some tape and tape down the back of the brad since they are so close to the edge, and that will allow me to use my ATG gun right over the top of them. So I added a little bit of the ATG adhesive, and then I'm using a ebony black cardstock for my card base. So I went ahead and pulled that out and attached that to the front of the card. And the front of the card pretty much is it at that point. So I'm going to go ahead and move on next to the inside of the card. And for the inside of the card, I do keep a very similar kind of format. Went with the same pattern papers from the Chillingsworth Manor paper pack. And again, just use the ATG gun to go ahead and adhere those to the paper. Exact same layout as the front. I didn't do anything majorly different here. Wanted to keep very uniform and from the outside to the inside. I did initially go ahead and use my Spellbinder dies to cut out another oval in white and then a black scalloped oval to use as the place where you can write a message to your recipient, and wanted to attach it more horizontally on the inside of the card, and then I decided that I really didn't like that, so I went ahead and kept the exact same layout as the front, which worked out again because I got to use my bat punch to add a couple more of those little bats in there on the front of the card. So I did go ahead and just attach those last couple of bats there with my Tombow Money Multi. And then once I get those attached, it takes just a little bit to let the glue set. But once I get those attached, I will go ahead and just use my ATG gun to add the adhesive to then attach the inside of the card to the card base. And that is pretty much it. Kept it very simple and pretty straightforward. And if you have any questions, let me know. The card will be available on Etsy, and I'll have a link to a list of the supplies on my blog. So we will see you next time. Thanks again.